They say love fades with distance. But I learned sometimes distance burns deeper than closeness ever could. Every mile between us wasn't space. It was pain. And when I finally saw him again, I realized love doesn't die. It waits. The silence between calls. When Ethan left for New York, the world didn't fall apart. It just went quiet. Too quiet. It was strange, really. After everything we had shared, the nights, the secrets, the laughter that echoed between coffee cups and stolen glances, I thought silence would be peaceful. But it wasn't. It was haunting. I'd wake up and still expect his message. The good morning sunshine that always arrived before my alarm. But days turned into weeks, and the space between our calls stretched like a wound that refused to heal. At first, I tried to fill the emptiness. I buried myself in work, pretended that I was fine, smiled at coworkers, and nodded during meaningless meetings. But my mind was never there. It was always wandering back to him, the way he looked at me like I was something rare, something worth breaking the rules for. Sometimes I'd replay our last night together. The way he held me, whispering promises he wanted to believe in. "We'll make it through this, Amelia," he said. "No matter how far I go." But distance doesn't test love. It erodes it, grain by grain. The first week, we called every night. The second, every few days. By the third, only when we could. I blamed time zones, work, exhaustion, anything but the truth. That something was changing. Or maybe we were. There was one night, I remember it so clearly, when I called him after midnight. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. "Hey, it's Ethan," his voice said, cheerful and distant. I hung up before the beep. But then my phone buzzed. A text. "Sorry, can't talk right now." Later, no heart emoji, no warmth. Just words. That was the night I cried. Really cried. For the first time since he left. Because that's when I realized distance doesn't just keep people apart. It changes who they are. I tried to be rational, tried to remind myself that love wasn't measured in calls or texts. But deep down I knew love needs presence, even in whispers, even in touch. Days blurred into months. I started writing letters, not to send, just to feel close to him. They piled up in a drawer like unsent confessions. "Dear Ethan," one of them began, "I still make 2 cups of coffee every morning. One for you, one for me. Yours always goes cold. Sometimes I'd walk by the park where we first met. That same bench under the old maple tree. I'd imagine him sitting there, waiting for me, smiling that reckless smile that made me forget my age, my fears, the world. But he wasn't there. And maybe he never would be again. Then came the night that changed everything. A storm hit. Heavy rain slammed against my windows, lightning flashing through my living room like camera flashes from a life I no longer lived. I sat alone, staring at my phone, debating whether to call him, and then the phone buzzed. Ethan. My heart almost stopped. I answered quickly. "Ethan?" Silence for a second. Then his voice, low, hesitant, familiar. "Hey, it's been a while." That voice broke me and healed me at the same time. I tried to sound normal, casual. "Yeah, it has." We talked. About everything and nothing. Work, weather, the usual small talk people use to hide the big things. But beneath it all, there was something unspoken. A heaviness. A distance not just in miles, but in hearts. Then he said it. "Amelia, I think I'm changing." I froze. "Changing how?" "I don't know. I feel lost. Like I'm not the same person who left." I wanted to tell him I understood, because I wasn't the same woman he left either. But I didn't. Instead, I said softly, "Just don't forget who you were." And who we were. There was a pause, and then the sound of his breath, shaky, uncertain. "I could never forget you, Amelia." Even if I tried, the line went silent. I thought he hung up. But before I could speak, he whispered, "I'll see you soon." Click. Call ended. And for the first time in months, I felt something again. Hope. But hope, I've learned, is a dangerous thing. It can keep you alive, or it can destroy you slowly. That night I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my head like a promise or a warning. I'll see you soon. I didn't know what he meant, or when, or how. But in my heart, I knew one thing. The story of us wasn't over yet. It was only changing shape. Letters I never sent it started as a way to cope, just words on paper. But soon, the letters became something else, something alive. A second heartbeat I didn't want anyone to hear. Every night after the world fell asleep, I'd sit by my bedroom window with a pen in hand and the faint sound of rain against glass. I'd pour my heart out to a man who was both everywhere and nowhere. My Ethan, my mistake, my memory. At first, I wrote simple things. Dear Ethan, today I saw a man wearing the same jacket you used to wear. For a second, my breath caught. I almost called your name. I miss how you used to pull me close by the collar, like you couldn't stand even an inch between us. But as the days passed, the letters became confessions of pain, of fear, of everything I couldn't say out loud. The first one I remember clearly. It was 2 weeks after our last call. Dear Ethan, do you ever think about me before you sleep? Because I still think of you. I think of how your fingers used to trace the lines on my palm like you were trying to read my future. You once told me that every line led to you. Maybe you were right. Maybe every road still does. I folded that letter, kissed the edge like some kind of foolish ritual, and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. That drawer, my graveyard of unsent goodbyes, became heavier with time. One night, after writing my 10th letter, I decided to burn one. It wasn't out of anger. It was something else. A quiet desperation to let go. I stood by the kitchen sink with a match trembling between my fingers. The paper curled, the words blackened, and as the ashes fell into the sink, I realized something cruel. Even when the paper was gone, the words stayed with me. You can't burn love. You can only watch it change shape. Everywhere I looked, there were reminders of him. The corner cafe where we'd meet every Friday. The song that played on the radio when we first kissed. The old sweater he once left on my chair. I never washed it. It still smelled faintly of his cologne, and the memory of that night we promised not to fall in love. And yet, we did. I'd lie awake at night reading old messages until my eyes burned. The I miss you texts, the teasing jokes, the voice notes where he'd whisper, Amelia, say my name one more time. I'd replay those until dawn, torturing myself with the illusion of his voice. But it wasn't all memory. Some part of me still hoped. That's the cruelest thing about love. It teaches you to wait, even when there's nothing left to wait for. One afternoon, I got a package. No return address, just my name, written in his handwriting. My heart nearly stopped. I opened it slowly. Inside was a book, The Great Gatsby, the same one I had once lent him. Inside the cover, he had written a single line. You were right. We can't repeat the past, but I wish we could. I must have read that line 100 times before I cried. Because in that moment, I realized he remembered. Maybe not enough to come back, but enough to haunt me. That night, I wrote another letter. Dear Ethan, you sent me a ghost today. A book that once lived in my hands now returned like a memory I didn't ask for. You shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have reminded me that love doesn't disappear. It just hides in things, waiting to be touched again. I folded it neatly, added it to the drawer, and whispered, maybe one day you'll read them all. And when you do, maybe you'll understand. Months passed. Winter came, and with it, loneliness, sharp and heavy like frost on glass. Everywhere I went, I carried him with me, not in pictures, but in silence. And then one morning, I got an email. Subject, you still write to me, don't you? For a second, I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I clicked it open. It was from Ethan, short, uncertain. I had a dream about you last night. You were sitting by a window, writing something. I woke up and knew you were still there. Somewhere. Tell me I'm not wrong. I stared at the screen, unable to respond. How could I tell him that yes, I still wrote, not messages, but letters he'd never see? Instead, I typed slowly, you're not wrong. I still write. But I don't send them. Some things are safer unread. he replied a minute later. Can I see one? My breath caught. I typed back, no, then deleted it. Typed again, maybe someday, but I knew I never would. Those letters weren't meant for him anymore. They were meant for me, the version of me that still believed in love without consequence. That night I read through all the letters again, from the first hopeful one to the last broken one. It felt like flipping through the ruins of something beautiful. In the final one I wrote, Ethan, if you ever wonder whether I stopped loving you, I didn't. I just learned how to live with it. I sealed it and placed it on top of the stack. Then I closed the drawer, slowly, like closing a door to a chapter that might never open again. But as I turned off the light and climbed into bed, I realized something painful. Even if I never sent those letters, he already lived in every word, and sometimes that's worse than being forgotten. The unexpected return, they always say time heals everything, but they never tell you what happens when time brings everything back. It was a quiet Thursday, ordinary, forgettable. I was halfway through folding laundry when I heard a car stop outside. The engine idled for a few seconds, then shut off, a familiar sound. The way it always hesitated before turning off, like the driver didn't want the moment to end. My hands froze mid-fold. I didn't need to look. I knew. I felt the air change. The silence thickened, pressing against my chest like a heartbeat I'd forgotten to control. Slowly I moved to the window, and there he was. Ethan, standing by the mailbox, wearing a gray jacket too thin for the cold. His hair was longer, his face a little older, but his eyes, God, his eyes were the same, soft, restless, guilty. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and panic. He looked up. Our eyes met, and for a second, the world went completely silent. Then, as if remembering himself, he gave a small, uncertain smile. I didn't move. Couldn't. It had been 8 months since the last email. 8 months of silence that I had convinced myself was closure. And now here he was, standing in front of my house like a ghost who never learned to stay buried. He knocked once. Then again. 3 soft knocks, the same rhythm he used to use when sneaking into my place years ago. I used to call it our code. I opened the door before I could think. For a moment, neither of us said a word. He was soaked from the rain. His voice was quiet, careful. You still write to me? I blinked, stunned. You came all this way to ask me that? He gave a faint smile, though his eyes looked haunted. No, I came because I couldn't stop dreaming about you. And just like that, everything I'd built, every wall I'd spent months reinforcing, began to crumble. I stepped aside. He entered slowly, like a man walking through a memory he wasn't sure was real anymore. The smell of rain mixed with faint traces of his cologne, the same scent that used to linger on my skin for days. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The silence between us was deafening, the kind that only exists between people who've loved too much and lost even more. You look different, he said softly. I laughed bitterly. Time does that to people. He looked down. I didn't mean to stay away, I thought. If I gave you space, you'd be happier. And are you? I asked. Happy? He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze drifted toward the small drawer by the wall, the one with all my letters. They're still here, aren't they? I froze. What? The letters, he said. I saw the drawer last time I was here. You always kept them close. I dreamed about them. It felt like someone had just read my diary out loud. The one thing I never wanted him to see, to touch, he already knew existed. He stood and walked toward it. I whispered, Don't. He stopped, hand hovering over the handle. I just want to know if I'm in them, my voice broke. You're in all of them, Ethan. The truth hung heavy between us. He turned slowly, his expression torn between pain and gratitude. Then let me read one. I shook my head. No, they were never meant for you, but you wrote them for me. No, I whispered. I wrote them for the version of you I missed. Not the one who left. That made him flinch. He stepped back, his eyes glistening. You think I wanted to leave? You think this was easy for me? You did leave, I said, voice trembling. You made it look easy. He sighed, rubbing his temples. I was scared, Amelia. Scared of what we became. Scared of what people saw when they looked at us. That stung more than I expected, because deep down, I always feared that he wasn't ashamed of what we did, but of me. I stood, trying to steady my voice. Then why are you here now? He took a step closer. Because the fear didn't go away. It just changed shape. Now I'm afraid of a life without you. My heart cracked open all over again. Every word, every look, it was like reliving the first time I fell for him. The same intensity, the same danger. I wanted to tell him to leave. I wanted to say it was too late. But when he reached out and brushed his fingers against mine, all the years between us vanished. The air shifted, again. That same electricity I swore I'd buried. Tell me to go, he whispered. And I will. But I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. Close enough to feel the warmth of his breath. Close enough to remember every detail of the past I'd tried to forget. And then, we heard it. A knock on the door. We froze. Another knock. Louder this time. Ethan's eyes widened. He mouthed, "Who is it?" I didn't know. My mind raced. It could be anyone. My neighbor. My sister. Or worse. I forced a smile, walked to the door, and peeked through the blinds. My stomach dropped. It was Mark, my ex-husband. The one person who shouldn't be here. I turned to Ethan, whispering harshly, "Go to the back room, now." He hesitated. "Amelia, go!" He disappeared down the hallway as I opened the door, forcing calm. "Mark, this is a surprise." He smiled thinly, holding a small box. "Just came by to drop off some papers you left. Didn't think you'd be home." His eyes scanned the room, the 2 coffee cups, the faint scent of men's cologne. "You have company?" he asked. My heart nearly stopped. "No, just me." He lingered a moment too long before placing the box on the table. "Strange. Thought I heard a voice when I pulled up?" I forced a laugh. "Probably the TV," he nodded slowly. "Right." When he finally left, I waited until his car disappeared down the street before collapsing against the door. My hands were shaking. Ethan emerged quietly, face pale. "That was close," I nodded, heart racing. "Too close." For a moment, we just stared at each other. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was dangerous. He spoke first. "Amelia, maybe this was a mistake." I shook my head, tears welling. "Don't say that. I came here because I missed you. But maybe the universe is trying to tell us something. Maybe we were never meant to last." That line shattered me, because deep down I feared the same thing. But before I could reply, he leaned forward and kissed my forehead. Soft, brief, like a goodbye disguised as tenderness. "Keep the letters," he whispered. "They belong to you now." And then he left. No words, no promises, just rain. I stood by the door long after he was gone, staring into the night that had swallowed him whole, and for the first time in months I didn't cry. Because maybe, just maybe, I was starting to understand. Some people come back not to stay, but to remind you why they left. The storm we tried to outrun. The rain started before dawn, a soft patter that turned into an endless roar against the windows of my apartment. I had always loved rain. It used to feel cleansing, as if it could wash away regret. But that morning, it only reminded me of everything I couldn't change. The sound filled every corner of the room, and still, the silence between Ethan and me was louder. He stood near the window, shirt half-buttoned, watching the storm instead of me. His reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, older, heavier, with thoughts he wouldn't share. "Are you really leaving?" I asked quietly, afraid that saying it too loud would make it true. He turned, his eyes dark and tired. "You know I have to, Amelia. If I stay, it'll destroy you." I laughed bitterly. "Destroy me?" "Ethan, that already happened the night you said you loved me." He flinched, the way he always did when my words cut too close. And maybe that was cruel, but love had made me cruel. It had also made me honest. When Ethan walked into my life, I had been numb for years. My husband had left me long ago, and the world had decided I didn't need to feel desired again. Then this boy, this brilliant, stubborn young man, had walked into my classroom with questions no textbook could answer. He didn't see me as Professor Hart. He saw me. And for a moment, I had let him. But now, the consequences of that choice were crashing down like thunder outside. There were whispers at the university, rumors I could no longer ignore. A photo of us together, blurry but unmistakable, had begun to circulate. Someone had seen us at the cafe downtown, his hand brushing mine, a look between us that no one could mistake for professional. The world loves to judge a woman for feeling too deeply, especially when she's older, especially when she's supposed to know better. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching as he packed. Every movement felt final. The zipper on his duffel bag sounded like a door slamming shut. "Where will you go?" I asked. "I don't know. Maybe my brother's place for a while. I need to disappear until this calms down." And then he looked at me, really looked at me, as if trying to memorize my face. "Then maybe I'll come back, if you'll still want me." I wanted to tell him I would wait forever, that I'd face the world, the gossip, the humiliation, anything, just to have him near. But I couldn't, because love, when exposed, turns fragile, and mine was already breaking. Instead, I said, "Go, before I change my mind." He crossed the room, hesitated, and then kissed me. Slow, desperate, trembling. It was a goodbye disguised as a promise. When the door finally closed, the rain stopped. 3 weeks later, rumors turned into reports. Reports turned into meetings, and meetings turned into an investigation. The university board wanted clarity. The word itself made me laugh. They didn't want clarity. They wanted a confession. They wanted to know if the whispers were true, if I had crossed the sacred line between teacher and student. And the worst part? I had, but not the way they imagined. It wasn't scandal or seduction. It was loneliness. It was two lost souls finding something that felt real in a world built on pretense. Still, the world doesn't care about why. It only cares about what. I sat in that gray office, surrounded by men who looked at me like I was filth. They spoke in soft tones, but their eyes screamed judgment. "Professor Hart," one of them said, "we've received a complaint from a student claiming an inappropriate relationship. Would you like to respond?" My throat burned. "Is that student Ethan Miller?" They exchanged glances. Silence, the kind that confirms everything. Ethan did not file the complaint, the older man finally said. "But someone in his class did, of course. Gossip spreads like fire in dry grass. One look, one rumor, one whisper. And suddenly I was guilty." That night I went home and poured myself a glass of wine, though it tasted like guilt. My reflection in the mirror didn't look like a woman anymore. It looked like a story people would tell in warning. Don't be like her. I wanted to call Ethan, to hear his voice, to remind myself that what we had wasn't wrong, but I didn't. Because every time I reached for him, I dragged him closer to ruin. Instead, I opened my journal and began to write. "Love is never the crime," I wrote. "The crime is believing the world will forgive you for it." 2 months later, Ethan came back. It was late, after midnight, and I was sitting on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the moon struggle to break through clouds. When I saw him walking up the street, soaked from the rain, I thought I was dreaming. He didn't knock. He just stood there staring at me, eyes red, lips trembling. "I couldn't stay away," he said. "I thought I could, but I can't. I should have told him to leave." But instead I opened the door. He dropped his bag and I fell into his arms. The smell of rain, the sound of his heartbeat. It felt like coming home. For a few hours we forgot the world. We forgot the rules, the consequences, the fear. There was only us, but morning always comes. And with it, the cost of pretending night could last forever. When the sunlight crept across the sheets, I woke up to find Ethan sitting on the edge of the bed holding my phone. My heart froze. He turned to me, voice trembling. "Who's this email from?" I grabbed it, saw the name, and felt my stomach drop. Dean Wilkins. He had written, "We've received confirmation of a student returning to your residence. You will need to appear before the board next Monday for a formal disciplinary hearing." They were watching me. Watching us, Ethan's face hardened. "You told me it would be okay." You said we were careful. I thought we were. He stood, pacing, his voice rising. You could lose everything, Amelia. And for what? For me? I tried to touch him, but he stepped back. The distance between us felt bigger than the room itself. Ethan, I whispered, tears burning my throat. Don't say that. Don't make me regret this. He turned away, whispering, Maybe we already should. When he left that morning, I didn't stop him. I couldn't, because for the first time, I saw what he saw, the wreckage we had built out of something beautiful. The rain started again, harder this time. I stood by the window, watching him disappear into the blur, and for the first time since meeting Ethan Miller, I felt truly alone. The sound of rain followed us for miles. The wipers swept it away over and over, but it kept returning, like the past refusing to be erased. Ethan drove in silence, his hands tight on the steering wheel, the city lights fading behind us like dying embers. We didn't have a destination, just distance. Distance from whispers, from headlines, from the eyes that refused to see love as anything but a sin. I watched the world blur past through the car window. Motels, gas stations, dark highways. The hum of the tires became a kind of heartbeat, steady and fragile. In that sound, I felt something break loose inside me. The last piece of the woman who once believed life followed rules. Now there was only the road, and the boy who had shattered everything I thought I knew about right and wrong. The motel room. We stopped in a small town somewhere outside Chicago. A flickering neon sign read Maple Inn, the kind of place where people came to disappear. The air smelled like rain and gasoline. Ethan carried our small bags, mine packed in panic, his barely filled at all. Inside, the room was old but warm. Faded wallpaper, one lamp, one bed. He dropped the keys on the table and exhaled. You should sleep. You've been through hell. I can't, I said softly. If I close my eyes, I'll see their faces again. He sat beside me, careful, like touching me might break me. Then let me hold you through it, he whispered. I looked at him, really looked. The exhaustion under his eyes, the defiance that hadn't dimmed. He was still just 22, barely beginning life, and yet he'd chosen to throw it all away for me. Ethan, I said, my voice trembling, you don't understand what this means. They'll paint you as the lost boy and me as the woman who ruined him. He smiled sadly. Then let them paint. We'll be the art they can't destroy. The morning after, I woke up to sunlight creeping through thin curtains. For a moment, I forgot where I was. The scent of coffee, the sound of running water, it all felt like a life I once lived. Ethan was at the small kitchenette, cooking eggs in a dented pan. Morning, he said, glancing back. I found a grocery store down the street. I sat up, hugging the blanket. You went out? He nodded. Yeah, don't worry. No one recognized me. But he didn't meet my eyes when he said it. I smiled anyway, because I needed to believe it. Needed to pretend that maybe, just maybe, we could live quietly somewhere, grow old in peace, like lovers in another world. When he brought me the plate, he hesitated before sitting. There's something else, he said finally. My phone, it's full of messages. From friends, from reporters. My stomach tightened. And, he swallowed hard, someone took a picture of us leaving campus. It's everywhere. I didn't need to see it. I already knew what it looked like. A middle-aged professor and a young man in love, caught in a moment the world would never forgive. The headlines by noon, the news had found us. Every channel, every website, every whisper carried our names like wildfire. Professor accused in scandalous affair with student. Forbidden love or abuse of power. The fall of Dr. Amelia Hart. I turned off the TV and sat in silence. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ethan sat beside me. We can't stay here, he said. Where will we go? He hesitated. I have an uncle upstate. He has a cabin by the lake. No internet, no neighbors. A hiding place, I said quietly. A home, he corrected. The drive to nowhere, the next few hours blurred together, endless roads. The soft hum of radio static, the steady rhythm of rain returning again. At one point, Ethan reached over and took my hand. His touch was warm, grounding. "I'd do it all again," he said suddenly. "What?" "Meet you. Fall for you, even knowing how it ends." Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. "You shouldn't have to say that." "But it's true," he said. "I don't regret you, Amelia." The way he said my name, like it was both a prayer and a wound, broke me. The cabin. When we finally reached the lake, night had already fallen. The cabin stood alone, surrounded by pine trees that swayed like sentinels in the dark. Ethan lit a fire while I unpacked. The warmth filled the room, but something colder pressed at the edges of my chest, the weight of everything we'd left behind. As I stared at the flames, I whispered, "Do you think they'll ever forget us?" He looked up from the firewood. "No, but maybe they'll move on." "And us?" He smiled faintly. "We'll make new memories, ones no one can steal." He walked toward me then, slow, hesitant, like the first time he'd ever reached for me. And when he kissed me, it wasn't passion. It was grief, wrapped in devotion, a promise made to survive the ruins. The phone call sometime after midnight, when the fire had died to embers, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I shouldn't have answered. But I did. "Dr. Hart?" a voice said. "Male, calm, official. This is Detective Lawson from the Chicago PD. We need to speak with you regarding the university investigation. It's important you cooperate." My chest tightened. What do you mean?" "I've already been suspended." "There are new developments," he said. "We'd prefer you come in voluntarily." I froze. Ethan looked at me, confusion in his eyes. "What is it?" he asked. I hung up. My hands shook. "They're looking for us." His face went pale. "You mean—" "Yes," I whispered. "They're turning this into something criminal." He stood up, pacing. "We didn't do anything wrong." I looked at him, tears blurring my vision. "In love, no. But in their world, we did. The breaking point, we didn't sleep. We sat by the dying fire until morning, the air thick with fear." "I can turn myself in?" I said finally. "They'll go easier on me if you stay out of it." Ethan turned sharply. "No, you're not doing that." "I have to," I said softly. "I'm the adult. I'm the teacher. They'll destroy you, Ethan. You still have a life to live." He walked closer, anger flashing in his eyes. "You think my life means anything without you?" I looked away. "You'll survive. You always were stronger than me." He grabbed my hand, not in anger but desperation. "Don't leave me, Amelia, please." The words hit like a plea from a drowning man. And I, foolish, broken, I wanted to save him. But deep down I knew we were both already sinking. The storm that never ended. 900 words. The night after Amelia's confession to Ethan, the world outside seemed to mirror the chaos within them. Rain lashed against the windows of her house, wind howled like a wounded soul, and thunder rolled in the distance, as if the heavens themselves were judging them. Amelia sat in her living room staring blankly at the flickering fire. Ethan was gone. After their heated argument, he had stormed out, his eyes full of hurt, confusion, and love all at once. The sound of his footsteps leaving still echoed in her heart. Her mind replayed everything. The kiss, the confession, his trembling hands, her tears. Every moment burned into her memory like an unhealed scar. The phone buzzed, a message. She snatched it up, hoping it was him. It wasn't. It was from Mark, her ex-husband. "Amelia, I heard something disturbing. Is it true you're involved with one of your students?" She froze. Her fingers trembled. The words stabbed deeper than any blade could. How did he know? Who told him? Her chest tightened. Her breath quickened. It had begun. The rumors, the storm, the judgment. She called Ethan, but it went straight to voicemail. Panic surged through her veins. She imagined him out there drenched in rain, angry, lost, maybe doing something reckless. She grabbed her coat and car keys, racing into the storm. The rain hit her face like shards of glass. Headlights blurred through the downpour as she searched the empty streets, calling his name through the thunder. Then she saw him. Ethan stood under the bridge, soaked to the bone, staring at the river, motionless. "Ethan!" she screamed, running toward him. Her heels splashed in puddles, her heart pounding. He turned slowly, his eyes red, his face pale. "You lied to me," he said. His voice cracked, not with anger, but heartbreak. "I didn't lie," she gasped, clutching his arm. "I was protecting you." "From what?" "From love," he shouted over the thunder. "You think I can just forget what we have because the world won't understand it?" Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks. "You're so young, Ethan. You don't see what this could do to you. To us. They'll destroy you. They'll destroy me." He stepped closer, the storm swirling around them like a curse. "Then let them. I'd rather be ruined with you than live without you." She couldn't speak. His words shattered her. She wanted to hold him, kiss him, tell him everything would be okay. But before she could, a flash of headlights blinded them. A car screeched to a stop nearby. Mark stepped out. "Amelia!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the rain. "Get away from him!" Her heart stopped. The past and the present collided in that single moment. Ethan looked between them, his jaw tightening. Mark stormed forward, fury in his eyes. "You've lost your mind! Do you realize what you're doing? With a student? It's not like that!" Amelia cried. "You don't understand." "Oh, I understand perfectly," Mark spat. "You're lonely. You're desperate. And you dragged this poor boy into your mess." Ethan's fists clenched. "Don't talk about her like that. Stay out of this," Mark barked. "You don't even know what you're doing." "Enough!" Amelia screamed, her voice raw. "Stop it, both of you!" But it was too late. In the chaos, one shove, one wrong step, Ethan slipped on the wet pavement. He fell hard, his head hitting the ground with a sickening crack. Amelia screamed. The world spun. She dropped to her knees, cradling him in her arms, rain pouring down on both of them. "Ethan, Ethan, please!" "Stay with me," she sobbed. Mark froze, horror replacing anger. "Oh my God!" She pressed her trembling hands against Ethan's face, whispering his name over and over as if sheer will could bring him back. His eyes fluttered open, barely. His voice was a whisper. "I told you. I'd never leave you." Then, silence. The storm raged on, but inside Amelia everything went still. She screamed into the night, her voice drowned by thunder. The one she had tried so hard to protect, she had lost. Mark called for help, but Amelia couldn't hear him anymore. All she saw was Ethan, lifeless, pale, still, her heart shattered into pieces no one could ever put back together.